Thank you so much for making the time, and for Mark and Michael and Lorna for being so enthusiastic in your response to my request to share your wonderful piece of research. And really, so a very good afternoon. And then this is our relaunch of the Bill Masters Post-16 Education Leadership Rig, and my name is Abdullah. I'm a senior lecturer in education at Derby University, and I have a few other roles with different universities as well. My kind of research is kind of links to further education, especially governance of education, and so I'll be sharing the session with conveners Kevin as well. So and Ali from UCL, and so quick introductions. So Kevin has been working and supporting Belmas for many years, and now a trustee at the board as well. And Ali at UCL, very much very strong education background. So we'll be supporting the sessions, and but also at the end we'll mention some of our future activities. We do have one of the co-convener above, in addition to Kevin and Ali, that's Dr. Alan Johnston, but is not able to be with us today, but I'm sure we'll have another opportunity. So we have two exceptional speakers on a very, in my personal view as well, very important points about CPD and staff development in further education. So I really want to again thank Mark and Michael and Lorna for accepting our invitation. So Mark, if you could quickly introduce yourself, please, and then Michael, and then Lorna. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Hi everyone. So my name is Mark Hyde, and I'm head of teaching, learning, and assessment at Barking Dagenham College.
Good to see you.
Hi there, everyone. I am Dr. Michael Smith, work alongside Mark as Faculty Director for Apprenticeships and Quality at Barking and Dagenham College, and privileged to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to attend and contribute.
I'm Lorna Loy. I currently work at the University of South Wales, but prior to that I worked for about 20 years in FE in Birmingham. Currently I manage HE degree programs, so I don't work directly in CPD, but I do actually deliver CPD to my team.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to presenting today.
Thank you. Excellent. So just a very quick, I think it's fitting for us to have a very quick word about the purpose of our rig. So the Post-16 Educational Leadership rig exists, research interest group exists amongst other research interest groups at Belmas to connect researchers, practitioners, and leaders working across the various very diverse post-16 landscape, from FE colleges to sixth forms as well, and adult education and apprenticeship providers. So we're here to share research and build networks and advance leadership practice in this sector. So our kind of structure for today, Kevin will give a very quick background to what the relaunch of RIG, and then I will hand over to our speakers. The format for the speakers would be half an hour, 30 minutes for each. That includes, it's up to how you want to manage that, whether it's a 15-minute presentation with 10 to 15 minutes question and answer. And then, you can be flexible about that, but the total time we're suggesting 30 minutes. So I'll hand over to Kevin just to say a very quick brief about the relaunch.
All right, well, thank you for that, Abdullah. Yeah, hello, colleagues. For me, having a post-16 rig within Belmas is pretty special and quite rare because, as you probably know, Belmas is very much school-focused. So to have you here today to listen to your presentations and to work with you on learning about CPD and your research is really important, because CPD in post-16 is expensive, under pressure, critically important, and not necessarily a normal part of everyday life. I've been an FE lecturer, faculty lead, vice principal, and I've seen over many years now, over a long career, how difficult it is to find funding to develop staff in a dynamic and thoughtful way, to create new leaders, to give people the confidence to teach, to bring out the best in people. So we've got these two different perspectives today, which I find I'm delighted to have the opportunity to listen to and to hopefully feed back on when the opportunity arrives. Because it's rare to do this, it's special to do this, and it's very unique to have people together to think about, talk about post-16 research, and in particular today, CPD. So thank you, and thank you to my three new co-conveners who stepped up and want to play a part in sustaining this rig in the future. So back to you, Abdullah, and then over to the presenters.
Yeah, I mean, about the relaunch, I know there was another attempt to relaunch a few years ago, maybe about 6-7 years ago, at Derby University, when I was at Birmingham City University, and then I think various things happened, but we think it's the right time to make this put this effort in. But I'd like to say something very quickly as well, our other co-convener, and then we can hand over to Mark, Michael, and Lorna here.
Thank you, Abdullah. Yeah, it's really exciting to be involved in this rig at this time. As Abdullah said, I'm based at UCL. I'm in the Centre of Educational Leadership. And while there is a large school focus in our centre, we provide the early career framework and other head qualifications and leadership qualifications. But actually, it's within FE that I first started to really think about leadership. And of course, when we think about leadership, the development of that significant resource staff is entwined and enmeshed and a central focus. So I think from having spent 20 plus years in further education before the last kind of 10 or 12 that have been higher education based, and seeing the students that we have come here for our masters and doctorates, when they're working in the FE sector, we see those priorities that I recognised, as Kevin said, when you're really working in the sector, you become crucially aware of the kind of competing tensions and forces, some of which have been written about in our colleagues' papers that they're going to discuss today. And I think just having opportunity to talk about this helps us understand and act thoughtfully in our work, including when we're based in the further education setting. So yeah, thank you. It's good to meet colleagues.
I think you're in a really great position, because I'm one of those who believe that education sector across need to bring good practice together. Even though my doctorate was in further education, my more recent projects have been about bringing school, university, and college governance from a governance perspective to bring ideas together. So without further ado, I think I'm going to hand over to Mark and Michael. Feel free to share anything resources you have. It's entirely up to you now. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Michael. We didn't plan this. Are you sharing, or am I?
Would you like to share,
who was going to share?
Mark?
I can share. I can share. Yeah, let's do that.
That's if you want to. Yeah.
Yes. No. We've planned to share. We just didn't decide who was going to do it. So
we'd be nothing without our slides. Like
exactly.
Like
exactly. Yes.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, I'll let you get started, Michael.
Okay. Yes. So we've already introduced ourselves to colleagues, and again, just to say, really, it's great to be here. I think the words that Ali, Kevin, and Abdullah have shared in terms of setting the scene for this, the necessity of this kind of space, It really resounds with my practice as someone that's still in FE. You know, the importance of CPD, it often doesn't have a platform. It's often not full grounded as it should be. And it is something that Mark and I certainly are immensely passionate about, as well as I'm sure yourselves as well. So it's just a huge thanks again for the opportunity to share. What we'll be talking through, you can see the title here, BDC Tracks, is the name of a CPD program that we've developed over a period of about 24 months here at the college. And what we're going to be doing, we're really, this is underpinned by a paper, an academic paper that we published with the ARPCE last, conference proceedings from last summer's conference. But I think the presentation will probably offer a bit of a kind of, it will offer hopefully a bit of a guide through the work in more practical terms, and the paper's a bit more of an academic profiling of what we did. So yeah, shall we dive in, Mark? Shall we go to the first slide? So in terms of storifying this and thinking about the journey that we've been on, what Mark and I have quite intentionally done here is take an excerpt from our college's Ofsted report. That was inspection took place in October 22. So you can see here, now Mark and I were both at the college at the time of this inspection. Mark wasn't in the role he's in now. In fact, one of the resultant moves after this inspection was to put Mark in position, and the college is blessed for that. And some of the work that we'll talk about, you will see the impact of Mark, and he'll talk himself to that. But yeah, this is just to set the scene as to where we were as a college now. Kevin, you know, your words really rang true with what we were doing at the time. Coming out of COVID, lots of dedicated, focused and effort, lots of good intention behind CPD, but it just basically wasn't having the impact. And I think if we self-assessed, we saw that ourselves. And unfortunately, you know, Ofsted deemed that to be the case as well. This is all true, I would say, as of at the time of inspection. Lots of CPD, it wasn't focused on developing teachers and their practice as it should have been. Lots of reasons for that. We don't need to unpack it. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide here. That's just to kind of set the scene on the journey, really. Now, Mark, I'll pass over to you in a moment, but just to say what we did as a leadership team. You know, we were dealt a leadership challenge essentially following that Ofsted inspection. We needed to improve CPD. There was there's the mandate from Ofsted as the regulator, but there's the moral imperative. You know, we were passionate about doing right for our colleagues, doing right for ourselves, and ultimately our students, our community. So we thought long and hard, and Mark and I were kind of essential to developing what came out of the resultant inspection findings in respect of CPD was to lean on what we knew, and what we knew is that teachers were experts, and that expertise was often siloed. Teachers often didn't have opportunities to explore CPD within their context, that it was perhaps too generic. And the whole notion of autonomy, giving teachers autonomy, choice, and empowering them in their own professional practice was incredibly important to us. And I think that, for me, not to speak on your behalf, Mark, but that stems from my own experience as a practitioner and the opportunities I'd been afforded, and, you know, CPD that I'd found meaningful. So that's where tracks kind of, you know, the shoots started to emerge from in terms of tracks. So over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, and thanks for those kind words a minute ago as well. I appreciate that. But so what we, as Michael's just said, really, what we wanted to do was we wanted to make CPD really meaningful. We always ran CPD, as you could see from our old Ofsted report there, but a lot of this feedback from staff was that it didn't really impact them, because we would do the sort of more traditional model of getting all staff in a big sort of conference centre and providing a taught lesson, if you like, on how to manage behaviours or how to carry out assessment and all of these kind of things. And it may have landed for some staff and it may have been impactful for some staff, but actually what we were finding was that some staff were excellent at managing behaviour. So they grew to see that sort of hour in the conference centre as a bit of a lost hour where they could have been doing other things. And as we all know, there's so many conflicting priorities. One thing we're all short on is time. So we wanted to make sure that our time dedicated to CPD was really meaningful and impactful for all staff. So we come up with this idea of what we call BDC tracks, for want of a better name. We've wrestled with the name for quite some time, and we decided on tracks in the end because we couldn't think of anything better. But tracks is supposed to represent the different routes. If you think of it as in train tracks, the different sort of routes, the different pathways you can go on to develop your practice. And at the heart of BDC tracks is this emphasis on individuality and autonomy. And so when Michael and I were thinking about how can we provide all staff with that idea of autonomy and individuality, we thought that the best way to do it was to encourage all staff to be able to run their own action research projects designed by themselves, completely bespoke, encourage them to take ownership of their practice, reflect and think, how do I want to develop my practice? What would be useful for me? And then when they've decided on that aspect of their practice, whatever it may be, carry out a small scale action research project in this open and free but supportive environment. Tracks can be anything. Staff can do anything they like, really, to develop their practice. The only thing we ask is that it's focused on pedagogy, so what happens in the classroom. And it's also at the end of the track, we would like them to be able to state what the impact has been on their practice and what the impact has been on their learners. And they can sort of evidence that in any way they like. Within this idea of pedagogy, that we want to focus on pedagogy, a side piece of work to tracks was that we designed and implemented this sort of these pedagogical standards, which we call our TLA, Teaching, Learning and Assessment Framework. And this is probably for another meeting, and we'd love to come back if you'd have us back and we'll talk about the TLA framework. But this is just to sort of just define how, when we talk about pedagogy, we're backing that up with this understanding of what we value as a college in terms of good teaching and learning, and what we value in terms of pedagogy standards, what should be in lessons. But I won't go too far into the framework because I'll talk for too long and I'll waste our time. But I just wanted to provide a bit of context on how they sort of link, and it's sort of part of what we do as an organisation. This is just sort of a sort of promotional picture, if you like. When we first launched tracks, and we launch it at the start of each year, and we encourage staff to think about the kind of things they might want to focus on. They might want to focus on, for example, how they plan and sequence learning, how they carry out learning activities, assessment, and so on and so forth. We've got external tracks as well, as you can see down the bottom there. They can get on a world skills program and become a world skills coach. They can do their advanced teacher status and become ATS through, which is run through the ETF. So it's not just all in-house. We're encouraging staff to look externally as well to develop their practice. But one thing I want to mention here is that these are not restrictive. If a staff member says, I want to focus on planning and sequencing, but their project, as we all know with research, it takes us down unexpected routes, and their project snowballs into something more focused around assessment, that's great. We don't sort of hold staff back and say, well, you said planning and sequencing. These are just really to give staff a bit of a prompt and a bit of a trigger to reflect on their practice. Michael, I'll hand over to you for this bit.
Yeah, so a few of the practicalities. So part of what Mark and I we recognised was the need for time. If we're going to do this well, it cannot be tokenistic. It cannot be a bolt-on. It can't be a Mark and I chasing around our teaching colleagues who are busy saying, have you done this? Have you done that? We knew we needed time, opportunity to support and work with the staff meaningfully. To your point again, Kevin, if it matters, then we have to prioritise it. So we negotiated with colleagues, senior colleagues and colleagues across the college, that every third Wednesday of every month will be dedicated to CPD. That is, time that wasn't allocated beforehand, and that's not, it's not anything remarkable. But what it afforded us was a platform through which we could ensure that we could work with our colleagues in a way that we would see complement the tracks program that Mark's kind of started to outline in terms of the structure there. So you've got the different routes. Maybe some interested in assessment, some planning, some are doing a world skills program, some are doing their teacher training. Through that, we could develop individual cohorts. So there were those kind of themings that created cohorts and groups, staff with commonality of interest that we could bring together, and they each had a tracks facilitator. Mark, you were one of those, as was I, and other colleagues across our teams were as well. We used a supervision style model and drop-in sessions to complement that. So as well as a monthly session where everyone would get together collectively, share their progress and kind of support one another, celebrate their successes, and talk about the challenges as well. We use drop-in sessions and supervision to follow up with individual staff, you know, provide that opportunity for meeting and for dialogue. I mean, ultimately, it was about creating that opportunity for meaningful dialogue to move things forward for that staff member. Next one, Mark. So, yes, do you want to talk this through, Mark, and I'll talk through the next one on impact?
Yeah, sure. So this is, you know, there is light and shade, and we're not going to try and sell tracks as this incredible thing, but it really has transformed what it means to be a teacher at BDC. Now, to be a teacher at BDC now, it goes hand in hand that you carry out some sort of action research to push things forward, and that could be as small scale as you like. It doesn't have to be something that tries to reinvent the wheel. It could just be experimenting with some different questioning techniques to try and make your assessment processes and learning check processes a little bit more engaging in class. But it has become synonymous with teaching at Barking Dagenham College. It is part of what we do. Through the autonomy and individuality, sorry, as you can see here, that's synonymous with this CPD model. Staff have achieved some incredible things, and we got some examples of those, but they're vast. I think this year so far we've got, I'm making this number up a little bit, but somewhere in the region of between 110 and 120 individual action research projects that have been completed. So there's so much that we can talk about now in terms of the good stuff that's come out of tracks. Each one of those action research projects as well is designed specifically by that staff member to improve what they do and ultimately to improve their learner experience. Staff surveys show that 91% of staff rate BDC tracks as either good or outstanding as a CPD model, which is great. I think the other two options were neutral and bad and very bad. I think there might have been, but the other 9%, interestingly, were neutral. Actually, nobody said bad, which we were absolutely thrilled about. We were over the moon with that. And through tracks as well, it's just created, we were more outward looking, an outward facing organisation. I myself am a committee member of the ARPCE, which is Action Research in the Post-Compulsory Education sector, which are a group that bring together research from across the sector and share at conferences. So I'm really proud to be part of that group. And also we're a college member at the Research College Group. So we're able, through these links, we're able to create connections with different colleges and different colleagues throughout the sector, which has been a real bonus.
Yes, so we started the slides with the Ofsted report, and Ofsted liked us so much they fancied popping back a year after. So you can see at the bottom here the monitor and visit report from 2023. So this was we were 2 months into tracks at this point, which was we'd done lots of pre-work, lots of consultation with the staff, lots of building of the groundwork. But you can see here from the feedback that Ofsted recognised, and I think teachers, you know, a lot of the methodology with Ofsted was about talking to teachers about their experiences in that monitoring visit, and teachers were more positive about what was happening. So you can kind of get a sense of that there. I mean, what's really gratifying for me is that we've got things like teachers receive good support to gain advanced teacher status. So that was, you know, Mark's outlined one of the routes there, an accredited professional status that we as a college were endorsing, and that teachers were valuing, and Ofsted was recognising as well. So that was, you know, that was really really nice. Obviously, now that this is looking back quite a time now, this is about 1.5 years ago, and we've had to wait another 18 months for Ofsted to visit us again, but they visited us just before half term. And although the report isn't public, it is. We were really happy with the outcome. They came middle of May, so not even a month ago. We were really happy with the outcome, and again, CPD was recognised right throughout the week of inspection. Lots of feedback on teachers valuing tracks and the inspectors seeing that. Ofsted are far from the arbiters of this stuff. We don't do it for Ofsted, but it was that kind of endorsement, and it was, yeah, it was good, I suppose, to get that external feedback and insight, as well as hearing from staff. So I think, yes, we've got an opportunity to bring this alive now, Mark. I'll hand over to you to cue this up.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Mike. So tracks is all about being in there. It's about experience. It's about living through your development. So we thought we'd show you some videos. I think at the risk of abusing the time you've kindly given us, we'll probably only have time to watch one. But I'll show you a video from our colleague Dave, who's is a plumber, plumbing teacher, and Dave, he's kind of our benchmark in the most respectful way possible, because he's kind of that guy that just doesn't want to engage in CPD. He pushes back at everything. He's not really interested. However, when he got into tracks and he started to understand what tracks was about, and we worked with him, all credit to Dave. He's not very, doesn't take too naturally to the digital side of teaching and learning. And he decided for his track to do a digital learning project. And it was completely his own choice when we were over the moon for Dave doing that. And I'll show you the results. Dave will tell you about his track way better than me, but I'm just having a bit of a concern because it's been a while since I've used Zoom, and I'm thinking I probably shared without sound. So bear with me 1 second, and I'm going to share again. Just so you're not watching a video that's silent. Okay, and then over to Dave. If you have any problems with the audio, please let me know.
My name's Dave. I'm a plumbing lecturer at the college. I've been here for 22 years. Today we had a little experiment. We got the students in. I've spent my time with half of the students, telling them what we was doing about putting a system together. The other half of the students have gone off on their own with the material, and they've had a look trying to source the supply through YouTube or finding their own knowledge.
So my name's Jack. I'm part of the digital learning team here at Barking Dagenham College, and it's my job today to oversee the digital team as we attempted to assemble and plumb in our systems. So we split into two groups. One group stayed with Dave and was using traditional methods of plumbing, and he was walking them through the whole process. The other group was with me, who is not a qualified plumber by any stretch, and we used digital methods using different Chromebooks and Jamboards and phones, Google Lens, things like that. We had a little bit of a wobble part of the way through because obviously we don't know how it goes together, because that was a big part of the experiment. But after using it once or twice and kinesthetically figuring out what we were doing wrong, our group was able to fix it, and by the end of the lesson had all built a fully functioning system. So this is Alfie, who was part of Team Digital. What do you think you got out of this compared to a normal lesson?
I thought I was engaging more in the lesson, more enthusiastic about the activities, and I feel like as well where questions are being thrown at me more, I've actually learnt more and responded better to the lesson than the normal one would.
I'm happy with the end product, and I believe all the students have finished up at the same goal at the end of it. And we've done it, you know, by doing it in two different ways, really. One with a teacher and one being self-taught.
This was Luke. He was on Team Digital. How did you find it?
To be honest, I found it quite competitive, as we all do, because we are a very competitive team, and I feel like it's just way more engaging with all the other students that weren't involved but now are just involved, because it's more like a competition now.
What we need to do is recap a little bit next week, so to see if both groups have been taught enough through each avenue. Everyone's been engaged in the lesson, and it's been a good exercise that they've, you know, it's kept them busy and kept all the students engaged.
Wonderful.
Okay, so I'll.
I think we've got time for the other one if you wanted to share.
Really, are you sure? Okay, that one's.
If Abdullah's happy with that.
If that's okay, I don't want to take up too much time. The other one's a minute and a half longer, I think. I was lucky enough to be involved in this one, but I'll show you the video.
Please,
it does bring the sort of what we're doing
I think we've
alive.
got time, yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Hyde. I'm from the TLA team, and today is the first day of a week-long project, a 5-day project, where 16 students from here at BDC are going to be writing and publishing their very own novels. All in all, we're writing 2 published books, and the students have been set in 2 groups. So it's not one student writing their own book, it'd be 2 groups of 8 students writing these books. And they're officially published books, they're professionally published and printed. This is going to a professional printing house, and they're going to be for sale on Amazon, and we're going to have a book launch day, and it's going to be really, really cool. This all runs through this external company called Whitewater Writers, who we've got in all week with us today. And Whitewater Writers have done this project with many, many different groups. They've done it in primary schools, they've done it in secondary schools, universities, they've even done it in prisons. They've never done it in colleges. We're the first further education college who are going to write and publish our own novels.
It's an amazing creative opportunity for our learners. By the end of this week, they're all going to be published authors, which, you know, as an English teacher is something I would love to say I'm a published author, but I'm not. And these guys are, and I'm incredibly jealous.
It's a 5-day program. Day 1 is entirely about planning. It's entirely about getting the ideas down. Days 2 and 3 are drafting. You should have a complete first draft by Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday are proofreading.
So today I'm here with the White Water Writers Project, and we're writing a book. Our book is titled The Yellowstone Disappearances, and I hope when it comes out, everybody will be able to read it.
Yeah, working with people more like-minded like me, but also completely different has been the most exciting part. And I'm really just excited to just to create this book.
We've all got our own ideas coming into the project of what we want it to be and what we want to say. So it's been interesting seeing all these unique perspectives kind of clash and seeing how we can make them fit together.
The way that the transgressions of our characters are happening, like yesterday we were writers and today we are editors, is really a thing to appreciate. We are doing literal multi-skilling at the same time. So a huge thanks to the teachers and a huge thanks to the whitewater writers who brought this idea to us, enhancing our capabilities.
Some of the students who really love the proofreading, they start to exert a little bit more control over the house style. They start to change the rhythms of the process. Some students really like the putting in of the edits, and they start to exert their influence over how the formatting quite works. And all of that happens beautifully and organically because you've got a well-developed team.
When we think about a project, putting our creativity to skill and doing something that we've never really done before, this was something I didn't actually think I would be able to do. But here I am. Almost in 3 hours, I'll be a published author. I find that quite an achievement.
So sometimes I had to learn to reel myself in so I can hear other people's ideas and not continuously over-talk over people. So that was a humongous learning curve, and to be honest, I needed to learn to do that anyway. So bonus.
In all my time in education, this is one of the best experiences I've ever had. Joe, do you want to tell us a little bit about the process and how you think our guys did?
That's right. We've just had 16 students go from a blank page on Monday morning, and they all watched us click submit on their final print-ready manuscript. And it's gone up. They've chosen prices, they've chosen how they want the formatting to be, they've chosen the font size for their title pages and for their cover. And it was such a magical moment to have everyone cheering in the room for each other's books.
I'm really excited to obviously be receiving the certificate and the book. Obviously all the team worked really hard in the week to put it together, and I think it's just a weird experience to be holding the physical thing you spent so much of your time working on.
Part of the whole emotional roller coaster I'm going on right now is just excitement, because I'm a published author now. So yes.
It's been such an amazing experience, and I'm thankful for Tom and Mark.
So thank you very much to everyone, and thank you very much to the teachers especially who brought us this opportunity. We are really glad here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thanks for letting us show those videos. I know they took a lot of time. In return, we'll wrap up the rest of the presentation really quickly, but you could see it was a wonderful occasion bringing those students together to write their book, and their books are available on Amazon if you're interested. But these are two examples of tracks, but as I said, we've got tracks of all kinds and big and small, and some tracks are really just a tiny tweak in someone's practice. Obviously, taking students through this process to become published authors is one of the more sort of something that took a little bit more time and energy, but it was a fantastic experience, and I hope, as I'm sure that video showed. So I'll go into what we learned so far, and I'll let Michael take over for the rest of it. But as I said, it's not all just amazing. Look what we've done, and everybody loves it. It's been really positive and it's been really well received. But some staff have, within that autonomy and that idea of, just be autonomous in your development, some staff have actually found that quite overwhelming. And they sort of come to us and they say, we don't really know, I don't really know how I want to develop my practice. In the first year that we ran tracks, that was a real barrier in engagement. We saw a lot of engagement drop off because of that, which was a real shame. And that was one of the negatives, which we've counteracted, and I'll show you that in a second. But staff feedback says that they really like that CPD is diarised because it just takes the way that being torn in between. Well, I should do some marking. It's like at that time, third Wednesday of every month, that is just sacrosanct for CPD, and staff have benefited from that. And through this sort of culture shift that we've been on through tracks. When we do get together as a college and we have our staff learning and development days now, it's not just listening to me talk about TLA or listening to Michael talk about TLA and quality. We hand over to staff and they just share their tracks, and they share their tracks college wide, and it's been it's a really amazing experience. And also tracks has now taken us beyond BDC, where we're working with external groups and external colleges. I'll let you take the last few slides, Michael, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. So you've alluded to there some of the challenges that teachers had with regards to the autonomy, the freedom. There was Mark and I naive to think, we give teachers choice and they'll just run at it, relish the prospect. But it was a challenge for some staff, and quite reasonably so. Now, one of the things that we then developed was a kind of, it's like scaffolding, which we
sorry, Michael, can I just come in? We got about 5 more minutes. The questions as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Sure thing. I'll wrap up. Yeah. So we developed tracks, off the shelf, which people could use and adapt. I think there's a few examples on the next slide. These were things that we saw as being important to our learners and to the college, but the idea was to give people a head start if they so wish, and that has proved useful. This academic year, we've had that in place. Next one, Mark. Well, this is yours. I can't take this. Good old Joseph Dunn.
Good old Joseph Dunn, yeah. So I'll end with Joseph Dunn, because really this is the ethos upon which Tracks was built, really. It's the whole idea that working in the pedagogic situation can't be made the object of analysis. In other words, the way that I read that, and Michael and I read that, is that your practice isn't something that is removed from you and you go to like a training day or whatever it may be, and you sort of think about your practice as this abstract thing that's kind of separate from you in that moment. We see development as something that you actually, you live through, you take into the classroom. I've got an idea, I'm going to take it into the classroom, I'm going to live through this development. And our message around Tracks has always been that they don't all have to be a success. We've had many tracks where staff said, I tried this, I thought it was going to be a great idea, actually it didn't work the way I thought. And we're always keen to emphasize that that's fine, that's great, that's learning. We're always going to be learning from situations like that. So this quote from Joseph Dunn has always just been our kind of driving force, and we've repeated it many times over the last 2 years when we're talking about Tracks. But I know we're cutting it really fine, so I'll end on that. But I just want to end as Michael started, really, by just saying thank you all so much for having us. It's a real privilege for us to be here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Round of applause. Yeah, that's great. And I think it's wonderful. One thing I noticed was how the way different parts of the college came together in the projects we saw. It wasn't simply that particular teacher or lecturer, but there were other, because I have done a little bit of work on what I call joined up pedagogy, which is where different parts of the university come together for the benefit of our students. And the students coming not simply the students not simply accessing the resources support separately from the classroom, but actually they can see it happening within the classroom. But I think in terms of questions, before we open up to the colleagues here, but there are some couple of points or questions made in the chat, and I think one of them, Ali's comment, you have already, Michael, addressed it about the Finnish system's influence on the BDC tracks. But there was another question, I think is from Steph early on. I think Steph had a question about the core enhanced expert, the use of core enhanced expert in the TLA framework, moving away from deficit lens and focusing on the whole experience as a journey. So how's the framework used throughout the year? That's the question, I think, Steph.
There's a health warning that comes with asking Mark more details about the TLA framework because he was talking to we I mean, I think in summary, it underpins our teaching and learning ethos. So we use it in lots and lots of ways. We use it on induction with new staff. We use it to inform professional development. We use it to inform evaluation of teaching practice, self-reflection. it runs through everything. Anything specific, Mark, you'll allude to within that?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, and I'll keep it really succinct. But I think really the idea of the way we've designed the idea of core practice, enhanced practice, and expert is that it's sort of a journey towards learner autonomy. So expert practice focuses a lot around learner autonomy, in that we totally understand that learners can't just be autonomous at all times. They need structure, they need guidance, but our goal is to lead them to a place where they're autonomous and independent in their learning, and the framework sort of is designed to encourage that growth in our learners.
That's great. We got time for one question from.
Well, I'd like to make an observation, if I may, Abdullah, just to Mark and Michael. I just think I think it's a brilliant model, and if the Association of Colleges aren't aware of this yet, I'm pretty confident they'd love to see it and learn about it and share it more widely. They're a member organisation for all the colleges in the country. And if you've got something that links action research to professional development of teachers, they will be your great friends in rolling this out, in my view, and the people I know there. But I think the clever thing about this is the leadership. You took a challenge and then 3 offset inspections on. You put together autonomy and empowerment, but you've realised also that that could be too big an opportunity for some people and they can't see where to go. So you've given them frameworks to work with now, and you've given them project titles or themes to work with, because not everyone sees it as a great opportunity. They like the autonomy, they like to be empowered, but it's too much, it's too overwhelming for them. So I like the way that you've seen and learned through that. But I think from a leadership point of view, the innovation, the creativity and the dynamism really shines through, because by giving people the chance to engage and then facilitating them in thoughtful ways like the 2 videos is unique, relevant, timely, and absolutely critical. And I think you've had a breakthrough experience, and it's a breakthrough experience that will grow and grow, hopefully nationwide, when others get hold of it under your control, hopefully. But linking action research to CPD is outstanding. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
Thanks, Kevin. And any other one? I think one last question before we move on to Lorna. Yeah, I think Ali's got a question here.
Yeah, I want to echo something of what's been said to Mark and Michael, because it is really inspirational to hear about this. And you know, whatever we might think about the Ofsted space, it's really fabulous how you've responded and created something that is so special. And I think Kevin used the word unique. I just wondered how, you know, in the sense of like kind of communities developing, so community projects that maybe 2 or 3 or 20 or 30 members of staff across the college might actually come together to join when we develop whatever we might want to call them, professional learning communities, or, you know, communities of practice. We sometimes need to give an infrastructure. So this sounds so wonderfully autonomous, but how do you manage that to get like the individual projects, but yet also bring people together? How do they find each other to work on collective projects that share the same goal?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question, and actually, that's really just down to staff. And when we designed the 10 different cohorts for tracks, we purposely mixed curriculum areas, because we didn't want curriculum areas just going together and staying in their, you know, little set and not really interacting. So we're trying to encourage connections across the college. We've seen a fair few now projects where 2 or 3 people have combined, and we encourage that. That's great. We've only seen one project where a department requested doing a departmental track, albeit it was a really small department. It was our counselling team, so only 3 members of staff in there, so a pretty small team. But they said, look, we want to experiment with different reading and take reading beyond the curriculum, but we want to do it as a department. Is that okay? Because they weren't all in the same track, but you know, we said, of course, that sounds like an amazing idea. So they all did that together. But it's really been very, I suppose, organic and natural the way staff members have just found colleagues with similar lines of inquiry. But of course, myself and Michael and the other facilitators, we've got quite a good understanding of what's going on across the college. So we're very quick to make connections between different curriculum areas where we see them. You know.
Yeah. Thank you. That's fabulous.
Thank you so much.
I've got a very pressing question, but you can respond it or not. But what would you say had been the biggest challenge, and then what would you say differently going forward into the next part of this this initiative? Yeah.
I think for me, Michael, tell me if you disagree, but I think the biggest challenge is getting cross-college engagement. I said at the start of this presentation somewhere that I think we have about 120 action research projects, which we're really proud of, but we have about 170 odd teachers. So everybody's not engaged. We do have other CPD routes. I won't go into too much detail, but we have things called essential CPD to make sure that there's a CPD offer for everyone. But the biggest challenge is still just getting every single staff member to to carry out action research. Some still see research as this daunting thing, whereas we try and promote the idea that we're doing research all the time. You know, when you wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to try something new in my class today, it's essentially research. So that's still something that's ongoing, but we're working on. That's been the biggest challenge for me, I think. Do you agree with that, Michael?
I would agree, and getting breadth of engagement as well. It's the or breadth as well as depth. Sorry, at individual level, ensuring that there's meaningful inquiry. But that's through the mechanisms we've created with the support structures. That's how we try and create those opportunities for staff.
Yeah.
And to your other point, I think the next steps. I mean, we're quite ambitious with this because I think we're. We both believe in it, and partially this is born of Mark and I having been through a similar program with Sunset, the ETS practitioner research program. We've experienced formal training, if you will, into practitioner-based research as practitioners, so we know the power of it. And I think 2 years have just vindicated that it does serve as a really powerful model for cross-college CPD. So we're really keen to grow it, and we're far from of the mind that we're far from the experts, really. We're keen to collaborate, network, and grow this, because it's through that and through connection that these things can grow more meaningfully and powerfully. You know, you find potency.
I mean, my role as a school governor for CPD the last 4 years, we had similar things, and I see in a slightly different way. I think what you got there, the engagement is really good. It's exceptionally good, I would say. And then to kind of take on board that what might be offered to the others and what they're doing is for CPD, to kind of elevate that, and then to form this composition of the engagement and what they're doing as other CPD to become the CPD profile for the college, for example. But thank you. I think that's great and wonderful, really. And I think we got a lot of scope to carry on engaging with you through our rig as well. If you're interested in that, I think we have a lot of scope there. So I think Kevin, Ali, shall we move on to Cynthia as well to the next speaker? Is Lorna, as I'm sure very eager to delve straight into your work. Yeah.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you, Mike and Mark. Ali, I think you put a message up, you referenced my paper there, Redefining Teachers' Continuing Professional Development in Further Education Providers in England. That was a paper that I'm going to talk about now. I don't know if you knew that. That was taken on the back of my thesis. So that particular paper was a synthesis of 80,000 words. That paper was 8,000, and now I'm going to condense that yet again into a 15-minute presentation. So I don't know what I'll like to say first. If you wish to stop me at any moment to ask questions, I'm more than happy for you to do that. I was working in teacher training, and I was an advanced practitioner in college in Birmingham many years ago. At the time of, I don't know if you remember this, the regulations. So there were the 2007 FE teaching training CPD regulations, which mandated that all teachers in FE needed to do 30 hours of CPD for a full-time teacher, or pro rata, depending on what they were teaching in a week. That meant that they had to complete 30 hours and record it and submit it on an annual basis in order to maintain a license to practice. There was a lot of backlash. I'm sure you know all about this without going back into history, particularly from UCU, the unions, and that particular regulation was revoked. So in the light of that, oh, sorry, I'm just have to, okay, sorry about that. Someone's waving at me. In the light of that, I asked the question, what are teachers doing in regards to CPD, professional development, etc., in that they weren't, that didn't have to do any regulated CPD anymore. So that was my research question at the time when I started my research. And it gave me a chance to question or problematize existing practices at the time. And the first thing I came across was the amount of different terms we use in FE. If we think about teachers themselves, they're called lecturers in their contracts. We talk about teachers, tutors, trainers, assessors, etc. And this just highlighted to me the ambiguity or the imprecision of theory and practices in FE, which are continuing to this day, but also the term CPD. We see the word professional development, professional learning, professional development, and learning professional growth. The ETF uses professional development, and all with interesting definitions aligned to teacher practice. So if you look at definitions regarding professional development and learning, they all are linked to what the teacher can do for themselves in terms of their own subject specialisms, classroom behavior, for example, teacher-student relationships. I thought that was great. Yeah, it was all teacher-centered. But then when I started to do my research and look at what teachers were actually carrying out in terms of CPD, in terms of formal CPD, the list was quite staggering. They were doing a list of CPD events or topics that were totally unrelated to teaching, learning, and assessment. Prevent, safeguarding, buckle training, using use of software for management capture, for example, Pro Monitor, Pro Solution. In fact, there was a whole list of CPD events which were organized as formal CPD, for example, in an afternoon or a morning or a day in a week. But they were all CPD topics that didn't really connect with teachers on a local or on a contextualized level. So I carried out focus groups, and it was within these focus groups that I got to hear what teachers were actually doing to satisfy their own needs. And what was transpiring was that there was very much a division or a binary aspect to the teaching role. One was organizational and one was occupational. I'll share a slide with you here just to show you what I mean by this. So just give me a second while I do this. Can you see that?
We can.
Okay, so what I managed to discover from the teachers' disclosure of what they were experiencing in terms of CPD, that there were very much two parts to the role. One I termed organizational and one occupational. And these are actually based on the work of Bathmaker and Avis in terms of their work on professionalism. I'll give you a chance to look through those. Please do ask me questions if you do have any. Okay, I'll just go back. I'll stop sharing now.
Yeah, so Lorna, it doesn't look like there are any questions.
Okay, yeah, no, so that's fine. So what was coming out of the research was that teachers very much needed subject specialist updating, teacher-student relationship training, which would help with classroom behaviour. But these particular topics were not arising in any formal CPD events. So what I discovered were that teachers, as continuous learners that they are, and we all know this, that is something that we're all quite aware of, were actually managing to find space and time themselves to actually cover the aspects of teaching, learning, assessment that were not covered in formal CPD events. So they were doing this in corridors, in their offices, in kitchen areas, for example. They were meeting up cross college with other teachers that could support them. So one example was one teacher was having particular difficulties with some students never handing in homework, being particularly uncooperative within a session. She went and talked to another teacher who was able to give us some help, a completely different subject teacher who was able to give her a bit of guidance which she could carry out. And that was simply just through an informal chat with teachers in a corridor, for example. So that led me to thinking about the term CPD, continuing professional development, which I felt was most unhelpful in actually describing what the teachers were experiencing in terms of formal CPD and the informal CPD that they themselves were planning and carrying out. Mostly carrying out without knowledge of managers or leaders. They were doing this themselves because this is what they actually needed for their own practices. And so from this, I'll share once again what I managed to sorry, can you get that? So I decided that CPD was a little bit unhelpful in terms of actually describing what the teachers were experiencing, but also what they needed. And so for the full professional role, so in that previous slide I showed you, teachers were having to undertake a role which met organizational goals, but they were also having to meet needs of their occupational role, which was subject specialism updating, especially for the vocational and trades teachers. So it was of utmost importance that they update their skills because they were passing these skills and knowledge on to apprentices, for example, to work in various places. So I came up with two terms here: organizational training and occupational development. And those are lists there of how I termed or how I categorized each of these. So I'll give you a chance to look at those if you have any questions. Essentially, what we found with organizational training were that they were CPD events to meet organizational goals or objectives. These were organizational goals and objectives which focused on policy. So I just mentioned safeguarding, prevent, British values there that teachers were undertaking. Anything to do with, as you can see here, Ofsted grade 1, that I termed it there mechanistic and technicist. Some teachers were undergoing Ofsted grade 1 teaching, CPD, in which they were being told certain activities or certain particular tasks they could do in order to gain an award, a grade 1 specification or category. And I felt that was a bit mechanistic because obviously, as we all know, know, teaching is very contextualized and localized. What works with one group or with one subject may not work with another group or another subject. So doing this grade 1 CPD, focusing on these sort of ideas that all teachers could embrace to up their grade, I felt was a little, well, it wasn't taking into account how teachers relate on a subject-specific level, or even on a level of working with individual students. So if I just go back to the original page there, can you see? Yeah. So those were the findings I got from my particular data there, and
Sorry,
I think
are you
this.
sharing?
Oh,
Or,
sorry. No, I've come off
okay.
sharing now.
Okay, that's fine. Carry on. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. So, though having that binary categorization of CPD, I felt could help leaders, teachers, policymakers to know that there is very much a divided role. Teachers, you mentioned before, there are competing demands on teachers' time, on pressures, which are to meet organizational goals and objectives, but also to meet classroom demands and student demands. So they need CPD to cover needs in both areas. So I felt by categorizing, well, we call it CPD, I still call it CPD, but by making it clear to teachers whether the training they're doing is organizational training or occupation development, I thought it afforded teachers the chance to see that level, that balance. And at the moment, there is very much an imbalance towards organizational training, where a lot of formal CPD events are very much there or very much organized for the organizational objectives. You mentioned Ofsted before, Mike and Mark, to meet those particular objectives. But teachers need training to help them the next day. They wanted training that they could take into the classroom the very next day, that they could use straight away with their students. And they were having to find the time and spaces themselves on the edges of their timetables in order to do that. So if they could see the different those two types of training that they do need, so they can actually allot time to each one, I think that'd be so important for teachers, leaders, managers, and policymakers to be able to organize their CPD practices in such a way to benefit teachers, to meet both parts of their role. I'm not saying that one is more important than the other. I'm not saying that. They need the organizational training. Obviously, they're working for colleges, providers that need to stay open. They need funding. There's marketization. They need to bring students in order to draw down funding. So they need to meet those organizational goals, but at the same time they also need these occupational needs that they can that arise from the classroom, from students, from cohorts, from subject specialisms, from their vocational subjects, from their trades, from their specialisms, etc. So that was the findings that I found from my particular research. There's quite a lot more there that I could explore or expand on, but I'm open there for any questions on any parts of that.
Thank you so much, Lorna.
Sorry.
I mean, you got another 15 minutes, so if you it's
okay.
open for questions and discussions. And a comment I like, I have a thought, and a query I have is, was the main issue you're raising there about staff's recognition of the two types of CPD, or was it more about the management recognizing?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. Well, it was looking at how CPD was being organized. I was very much interested in the formal CPD that staff were actually doing at the time, because remember, this was in the light of the revocation of the regulations. So I was interested to know what formal CPD they were doing. At the time, I was not to know anything about I went into independent training providers, and I also went into 2 general FE colleges as well. I knew nothing about what was on offer, what they they were undergoing at the time. So it was surprising when they gave me the list of the topics that they were doing at the time. And if I want, I'll share with you something else here. So just bear with me. So that was just a list of what one college was actually doing: prevents, core working together, safeguarding, observation training, COP, violent extremism, prevent again, domestic abuse, mental health. So these were all the formal CPD events that one college was actually providing for their teachers. And there was nothing there to help them in terms of, oh, can you see that?
No.
No, not now. No.
Oh, okay. You couldn't see that list. Can you see that?
No, we couldn't, Lorna.
Oh, sorry. Let me. Can you see that there?
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah. That's the prevent, safeguarding. That was all. Those were all the formal events that the teachers were participating in at the time of the research. And they said to me, so to answer your question, Abdullah, they said to me, let me go back. They said to me there was nothing there that helped them with their subject specialisms, with classroom behaviour, nothing that they could take into the classroom the next day. So they were the ones that told me that in the focus groups. So the discussion then led on to, well, how they were meeting those particular demands of the classroom. And that's when it transpired. During the formal events, they were able to get together with other teachers and ask questions. Oh, what are you doing with so-and-so? How do you do this? So it was finding these spaces within formal events that they were able to meet other teachers to actually address those specific needs within the classroom. As I mentioned before, teacher-student relationships, the classroom behaviour. And for subject specialisms, a lot of the teachers were organising their own events in terms of inviting experts to come in. You talked about plumbing teachers there, Mark. So the plumbing department were inviting specialists from manufacturers to come in and talk to them about the latest whatever in terms of plumbing, for example. So this all, I didn't know what the teachers would say. These were in focus groups. I set up the focus groups in such a way as almost like a session where they carried out activities. They wrote on cards. They did an ordering activity. They did small group work. So it actually encouraged them to disclose what they were doing in practice. So the focus groups were set up so that they would talk to each other and then talk as a group. And this is when I was able to really find out or gather data on what the teachers were doing to address those needs that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and Steph make a really important point, useful point about kind of teachers self-organizing and their professional learning because of the lack of time or the pressure for what you would call organizational CPD.
Yeah.
And finding limited space and time available, and whether that sort of thing could lead to issues around teacher stress and retention. I don't know if that's part of your research, but yeah.
Yeah, it was indeed. Sorry, I just noticed that, Ali, you asked the question why I chose the word occupational. This was all based on the work of Bathmaker and Avis, and they looked at organizational professionalism and occupational professionalism. So I extended their particular research and work and decided to use the word occupational because they defined it in terms of subject specialisms and the actual needs of carrying out their occupation as a teacher. So it was a word that I felt aligned with classroom practices and subject specialisms, for example. So that's why I chose that word. I felt professional was too woolly. It was too vague. It didn't really align to the teacher as carrying out this particular role within a classroom and outside the classroom too. It's not just about the classroom. It's outside too. So I thought occupational aligned well with the other word, organisational, so the organisational and occupational. But Bathmake and Avis were the ones who wrote about these two types of professionalism. Abdullah, sorry, your question?
Yeah, it was actually Steph's question about
Steph's question.
Teachers having to self-organize their CPD time to meet their own occupational or professional needs, whether your research
That's
covering
right.
the impact on, for example, teacher stress and retention.
Oh, absolutely. Teachers came back to me and said that they had pressures of time, almost that they were blaming time itself. So there's not enough time in the day, not enough time in the week, as though time itself was the problem. But in fact, it's the demands of the role that causes these problems. You talked about competing, someone mentioned it early, the competing demands on teachers. So they're having to fulfill organizational demands in terms of reporting, data capture, data management, administration, enrollment, for example. There are pinch points during the year when they have to meet occupational demands such as marking, planning, meeting with students. They might have to undertake parents' evenings as well. I'm not too sure if they do that. Yeah, there were demands on the time. So stress very much was part of this, but teachers teachers blamed time for that, when in fact it was this binary divide in their role that was responsible. They were being pulled in two ways in terms of what they had to carry out on a day-to-day basis. And unfortunately, formal CPD was only meeting the aspects of one part of that role, which was the organizational. Does that answer your question, Abdullah?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, thank you. And
just to say to you, it sort of cross-references well to Michael's presentation as well, because I can see sort of the creativity opportunity that was sort of wrapped around a post-Ofsted reaction. And then you've got this sort of these channels that you've talked about that people live in to do relatively mandatory functional, which I, not having worked in schools, but the school sector-based CPD, that sort of never-ending mandatory CPD that we hear about is there as well. But Michael's popped a question in there. Can you see the question?
Right. Let's go down.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, feel free to come in if you want to.
Yeah, it's super interesting work, Lorna, and it absolutely resonates with me and my experience of working in the sector, for some time. I'm interested in the classification work. Did you find, in talking to any teachers, that there were any activities that you felt bridged?
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the interesting things about research, Michael, is that we do have these binary classifications and categorizations very much come across as black and white. They're not. They're very much a spectrum, and there were activities that crossed both divides. So there were organizational goals that very much met occupational ones too. So there was very much a gray area, but for the purposes of the research, I just had to have this binary classification, categorization. But you're absolutely right. For example, one organizational objective is Ofsted action plans, and that very much crosses over into the occupational, the classroom demands too. So that was only for the purposes of this research that I had those. But yes, as you know, as a teacher and a leader yourself, there is very much a spectrum at play here for teachers in their roles.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, it's I think that kind of reminds me. I mean, Michael, Mark's your work on teacher agency, and then also leadership making a decisive action that might kind of allure to the top down, but it's a top down for the sake of teacher agency. So you create weekly times for CPD, but it's where the decisive leadership planning and implementation leads to teacher agency being implemented on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. And the agency comes obviously not from the allocation of time from the leadership, but is how the time is used by the teachers, whether it's, as you call, occupational or organizational type of CPD.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's interesting. And whether, I mean, it's really interesting how the landscape is managed by teachers in that very some people might call stifled CPD landscape,
Yeah.
and then how whether they felt they were able to meet any aspect of their occupational needs at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
It's an interesting word you use, stifled. I think it's very much hidden. So a lot of this is taking place unknown to managers and leaders, that teachers are meeting and actually improving and developing their practices on the edges of formal CPD events. So they are doing this. I mean, teachers are very much interested in improving their own practices. And they will go out and do that. They will ask those questions to address those needs that are rising in the classroom. And this is their agency. So agency was very much a theoretical lens I used to delve down into the data to teacher agency, which didn't arise in the formal CPD event. So teacher agency was actually pushed to the edges because their local knowledge, their expertise wasn't being used. There was no localization of the topics within the formal CPD agenda, no contextualization. So that really was stifled. That's a good word you use there. Teacher agency very much was stifled, but they were able to regain that through their own agenda in terms of meeting other teachers, the professional to professional dialogues that they themselves organized, just meeting other teachers. And this is going on all the time, I feel, but I'm not sure that it's properly recognized. It's certainly not recorded in any formal way by colleges and providers, but it is going on. So I think probably managers and leaders need to know more about how that is going on in the background, and actually for teachers to be recognized in terms of doing that to improve
Just
their
to
own
comment
practices.
on what the two research projects we've seen today is proving to be again a very potentially a really good collaborative space being created right now here, where your work on how teachers self-organize, and then Michael and Mark's work how leadership facilitate teacher autonomy within the PD as well. So so you could argue then, suppose, whether leadership is able to facilitate that or not, teachers would seek and enable and make that happen.
Yeah. They do enable it, but I would argue that leaders and managers have to be more aware of it, that is, and give teachers credit for what they're actually doing in these spaces and in this time that they find themselves.
Yeah, can you see Ali's question there?
Oh, sorry, no. Where is that?
Ali, do you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, Lorna.
Yes,
I've only
yeah,
just posted that, but I just wondered if you could say something about trust and whether that appeared in your research and whether it's in both forms of the teacher development, or or even a lack of trust. What research illuminate that at all?
Yeah, well, trust, I'm going to move on to move that along a bit. In terms of the formal CPD events, teachers were leaving the events. They were completely forgotten about whatever the content was. That was forgotten almost immediately, or certainly next day. So I don't think, but interestingly, actually, Ali, when I asked the teachers about their formal CPD events, they didn't criticize them. They actually wanted to go to the events, and they felt their organizations were really proactive in putting on all these different events. And they said to me, oh no, we're really good here. Look at all the events we go to. So they were so complimentary about all of these CPD events. And it was only in discussion that they were able to think, well, actually, not all of those events are helpful. We don't go into our classroom the next day and use any of this learning. It isn't contextualized to my particular students and my subject. As for talking about the the profession to professional, the teacher to teacher spaces, trust, I didn't specifically ask that question, but I would say that that was exemplified by one teacher talking to another teacher about a particular issue she was having with a student, and going away and using those ideas and finding that they worked. So obviously she was so happy that some colleagues gave us some advice. She went away, it worked, and she was able to have a better relationship with these particular students that were causing her problems before. So I think that was a good example of trust there, in terms of in fact, there was definitely trust, because she approached those teachers themselves. So she knew that they had something, or they possibly had something to offer her.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Lorna. And you made me think then, as you were speaking about the big events that were laid on. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, we talk about the hidden curriculum within a school, you know, but actually having been part of FE College and also thinking about CPD for the college, there's something, isn't there, about what happens in those events that maybe can't be replicated in other spaces when you've got very disparate, often spread quite widely geographically, teams working, and you bring them together. There's an element of other things happening other than the professional development. So.
Yeah, I like that. So hidden curriculum, it's hidden CPD within the CPD. So something at work, forceful within that CPD event. Yes, I agree with you. That's what made it very powerful for these teachers.
Yeah, it's just I mean, it's probably there's a social element as well, isn't there?
Oh yes.
When they attend those, and I'm pretty sure they're very grateful for that opportunity to come out of their normal weekly spaces.
Yeah, there was definitely collegialism there, collaboration, in terms of being able to approach other teachers within formal events to ask those questions that they were at the forefront of their minds. Yes, definitely collegialism was something that did arise in the data. Yes.
So I think one thing from the two pieces of research we've seen today here is one, Michael and Mark's one is very, you can very easily create action research journals, if you like, records from, because it's so organized in terms of, and then here we have organized for a particular reason, then real pedagogical, if you like, or occupational or professional CPD happening in a very kind of impromptu way. So whether those academics here, whether you would still call that action research in a very let's say natural way, but not necessarily with a particular project in mind. So I think that's interesting.
I just call it informal development. So that's occupational development comprises this informality. There is no structure to it at all. It's ad hoc. It's as and when needed. So it's needs based.
Yeah. That's a beautiful contrast, and both are real valid forms of development happening given the context the institutions are in. So are there any other with
Lorna's with Lorna's presentation, which I think really it speaks of an experience that I think I recognise in colleges and a lot of people recognise in college. It's more of a comment that I've noticed the organisational CPD moving to online platforms, which I work in a number of colleges over the last couple of years, which you do them, it goes away, it comes back in 6 months, there's no room for discussion, and let's say it almost puts pressure on CPD. I came back in January to 30 online courses, including manual handling and various other ones. do you? I mean, you might not have looked at this, but do you envisage that impact on CPD? That it's almost becoming
I
a
didn't. I didn't, Paul, because at the time that online presence, the online platform hadn't taken off at all. But I agree with you. I mean, I've just been sent some training to do today from my workplace. It's all online, so we're definitely going to lose that collegiality, the collaboration, that lovely informal coffee break with other teachers in a room. Yeah, that's going to disappear, and that will make CPD so much, it'll lose so much of its value to teachers in terms of being able to just talk to someone else, just ask questions. So yes, that's further research, that's another research paper.
Yeah, it just reminded me of when you used to go to the organisational ones. You did still see people and talk about other
You
things,
did.
and it's. I think it's a bit of a loss, actually.
It is.
That these courses are popping up in your inbox every 3 months, reminding you to do your health and safety and your.
That's right. And they're so time consuming, aren't they? I mean, we
Yes.
have to do them. We get endless emails reminding us to do these, and they will take up, I don't know how many days within a year, but they are consuming. I just want managers, leaders, policymakers to be aware of this when this CPD is organised, negotiated, and sent out. That the time it takes up, and that it just does not help us in terms of classroom practice at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so well then, thank you so much for sharing your wonderful piece of work, and then you got a paper out of that as well. Are you thinking of doing any more writing up?
Not sure. Would do. I haven't thought about it as yet, but I would love to find maybe what you'll mention there, Paul, is an area that would make a good research paper.
Thank you.
Which would lead on nicely from mine.
That's great. Wonderful. Thank you, Lorna. And thanks for all the contributions from the floor as well. So I think we got about half an hour or so, isn't it? We nearly finished. Am I right? Yeah. Kevin, is that right? At the time?
Yeah, I think we're nearly there. It's just to highlight the next opportunities that you suggested as well with Ali and myself.
So, in terms of going forward for this rig, thank you, Kevin, for that reminder. So I think we have a number of things coming up, and so there are multiple ways we could collaborate. We think research and publications, perhaps co-author various formats of the research that you've done, and the reflections and the outcomes and findings, especially for practice. I think that could become for the rig to perhaps collaborate on towards special issues of journals, whether it's FE leadership or BILMAS journals. We could create kind of a podcast where 2 or 3 of us discussing it further in length, one aspect of the pieces that you've done, and I mean, it's BILMAS, as some of you might already know. If you remember, you have free access to several Scopus indexed journals. MIE, Management and Education, is one. Educational Management, the email Management and Administration and Leadership is one. So our goal is to, with this relaunching event, to go further and then build upon topics such as CPD in FE leadership, and perhaps organize a special issue towards the journal. That would be a good idea. Post-16 leadership and governance. And so I would like also to share a few events coming up, not necessarily just through BLMAS, but there's Paul, I'm sure would know, we got the BCU, Birmingham City University's AFE Congress happening on the 27th of June. There are various themes, and one we are interested in is leadership and governance in FE. There is for this rig, there is a hybrid session at the Belmar Summer Conference in Brighton, in lovely Brighton, but it's online. You can join, I think, Kevin, right? The 4th of July, there's an event.
Yes.
The next rig event for the online event would be in October, where we could collaborate on perhaps an early career research network that Bill Moss is organizing. So we could coincide the October event, October RIG online event, and align with FE leadership to early career researchers. And so in terms of the resources from this event, our lovely Cynthia, I'm sure, is very helpful, would share, that's right, isn't it, Cynthia? The resources for the sessions for the attendees. And I think, yeah.
It'll be on the Belmar's website, is that right, Cynthia?
What this recording?
Yeah.
Yes, it will be. It won't be on immediately, but it should be on within the next few days.
Thank you.
Okay, and Michael and Mark and Lorna, are you all right for us to share your?
Yep. Yeah, that's fine.
So please forward them to us, and
absolutely.
then we'll forward them to the office as well. It's as kind of resources and artifacts, if you like, these days, what we're calling from today's. So thank you all for your engagement today, everybody, and for sharing your work. It's really, really interesting, and I can have another hour and a half talking about my my work in governance on CPD in FE and schools as well. So, but thank you, Kevin, as well, and
thank you,
and Ali for our collaboration towards this. So we look forward to building this, community together, really. And is there anything else you want to add, Kevin and Ali?
No, I'm just very grateful to hear two great presentations that really did mesh well together. So thank you.
Yeah, I would like to echo that. They're fabulous presentations, and just I tried to upload something related to the Finnish landscape, just that might be useful to Michael and Mark, but the copy function doesn't seem to be working, so I apologise for that. Thanks.
I can pop my email address in the chat, Ali, and feel free to email over.
Oh, that would be perfect. Thanks, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And Cynthia, do you want to say anything more? Is there anything else we need to say?
No, would you like me to stop recording at this point?
Good idea before we start drinking.